All right, let's get to the second game of the day. It is going to be the Washington Commanders and the Dallas Cowboys. This is up to 12.5 now in favor of the Cowboys over the Commanders. The total's all the way up to 48.5 to 49. Adam, when we take a look at this one, Commanders break everyone's heart, loses last week in Survivor, knocks out basically, half of any pool that was left out there. And look, 6 turnovers, you can point to that and just say, like, okay, well, they're not that bad. Agreed. No team is 6 turnover bad. But are they still 2 to 3 turnover bad against the Dallas Cowboys defense that is pretty opportunistic? Probably. I think for me, it would still be laying it with the Cowboys or nothing. I always look at the Cowboys, though, and play them first half. I played it first half last week as opposed to the full game. I would almost do the same thing here as well. We know they are not afraid to kind of take their foot off the gas. We know that there's some conservative elements to this team. We know that they are okay with putting guys on the sideline should they get up super big in games. And so I think it's more of a first half look on the Cowboys for me, but what say you?
I'm oppo in this. I think it's Washington or pass for me in this game. And I don't like to see the kind of overreaction that I think we're seeing in the market into last week's game, because we're looking at a Washington team that probably never should have been favored by 9.5, however much it was against the New York Giants, right? I don't know that I believe that the direction of this makes sense given Washington's offensive capabilities. And I understand very well that we've seen Dallas blow out some bad teams at home. The Dallas Cowboys have been absolutely dominant against bad teams in their own building this year. And I kind of made this mistake a little bit in actually playing the Rams earlier this year. I'm not going to make that mistake here in this direction. I do think the script is similar to what we just talked about with Green Bay and Detroit, though, where I think both teams are going to score. I think Washington put into a situation where it has to chase, and Sam Howell's going to throw the ball 50 times a game. Sam Howell's got enough YOLO in him that there are going to be points in this game. Even when the Dallas Cowboys defense was good, you still had a little bit of gambler in Trayvon Diggs and the ability to complete some big passes. So if I were to play spread, I think I would wait to see how high this goes and probably get what I'm going to guess is 13, because I've already seen a 12.5 pop on this game. So yeah. I would think it would be 13. Again, I'm not rushing to it to play it. I'm trying to give you guys some ideas about the way I would if I did.
Absolutely.
The thing for me here, ultimately, in the end, is I think Washington's offense will be more successful than this spread is giving it credit for.
Steven, in years past, I would be very confident that this game would get to 13.5 because it was an island game involving the Cowboys, and it was people just come in and they bet the favorites and they're going to whatever. Now that we're in, now that legalization is in as many jurisdictions as it is right now, we're getting more educated bettors and stuff. Like, I can't say for certain it's going to get to 13.5. I do think 13 pops. It probably gets bought every time. We're probably going to tick between 12.5 and 13 all the way up to kickoff, because my guess is 13 is the buy point for everybody on the Commanders. It would be hard for me to argue against that being a buy point, because 13 points in the NFL is just it's a ton of points, right? It's just a ridiculous amount of points. And so I would almost go this direction. And I know that people are going to like roll their eyes at me, but if you're willing to lay 12.5 or 13 with the Cowboys, then you might as well lay like 16.5. Like, they're going to just, then they're just going to, you know what I'm saying? They're just going to beat the brakes off of them, or this game is going to be one of those weirdly close games. Like, I don't think that there is something where you're going to need, the 12.5, right? It's like, no, either the Cowboys just beat the ever living crap out of them, or it's one of those weird games where the Commanders figure out how to keep it close against a really good, Dallas Cowboys defense. So again, that's my, if you're looking to play the full game stuff, that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'd be surprised if this gets to 13 and sticks at 13. Then again, last week we saw the Dolphins team never stop all the way to the point where it got to 14 against the Raiders. So, I mean, maybe it keeps going. So just keep an eye on it. I agree with you guys. On paper, this is a severe downgrade to the market rating for the Commanders. The Cowboys were 10.5 on the road against the Panthers just a week ago. They were 17 against DeVito. So this is basically downgrading the Commanders and this offense all the way to basically a bottom 3 team in the NFL. I don't think I agree with that. Like I know that they're always good for a stinker every once in a while, as evidenced by last week. But this offense at least still is punchy, right? Like when Sam Howell gets rid of the ball, he's got metrics that are above average in the NFL this year. The Panthers and DeVito and some of these other offenses, Aiden O'Connell and the Raiders, like they don't have that type of offensive upside in any given week. So you just never know when you're going to get it with the Commanders. It seems it's just hard to predict. They're a high variance team from week to week, but to get this many points, it feels like to me that it's really hard for the back door to ever be closed. But at the same time, the Cowboys at home this year have scored 30 points, 38 points, 43 points, and 49 points against other bottom of the barrel NFL teams. So if I want to back the Commanders, don't I just parlay it with the over? Like, how often are the Commanders covering the spread in a low scoring game? I don't see that happening with how putrid their pass defense is. You know, what's your thought on that angle, Matt? I full disclosure, I screwed up, didn't wait long enough. I parlayed Commanders plus 11 with the total, I think was at 48 and a half. And now we're at 12 and a half, might be going higher here. So I put it in too early, but if I'm backing Commanders, I don't really see much of a reason not to parlay it with the over.
Yeah, Adam, it's one of these, it's kind of the reverse correlation, I feel like, in this one, where it's like you need the variance, you need all, like if you're on Commanders, I think you want this thing to be high scoring, because if it's low scoring, that means they're probably not scoring, which means this could be, 27 to 10 type game or whatever. And so I think that in my personal opinion, you would be looking more at an over type game here if you like the Commanders than you would be looking for an under type game.
Yeah, I get that overall. And to the question that Steven asked, I think that one is kind of more of a personal risk tolerance and math question, because for me, I've looked at the NFL this year and said, just because there's a lot of offense doesn't mean necessarily there's going to be a lot of points, right? Like Washington outgained the Giants last week. But when I look at needing to have both outcomes of Washington covering the spread and the game going over, then for me, it just comes down to, am I getting a price that makes sense? And am I going to be able to absorb the the mental anguish of this game potentially going one-way traffic to the over, but Washington being nowhere involved in the outcome?
Yeah, it's fair. The last thing I'll just mention about like possibly like pairing up a spread with a total is that the books are getting smart to adjust prices to correlated parlays like this. I went to one book to try and parlay Commanders in the over, and I was only getting about plus 230. I went to another book and they were giving me plus 285. So that's definitely something that people really need to shop at this point, because the algorithms are taking into account some of these correlations.
The other thing I want to bring up, and I get it. It is a bad look. I get it. It is a bad defense that the Cowboys are going up against here. But man, Dak's passing prop is 278 and a half. That's just a lot of yards. Like I blindly basically went under on Mahomes on Monday night because it was at 285 and a half. And like in the NFL, it's just hard to throw for 286 yards, right? Well, we're asking for 280 out of Dak in this game. And I get it. It's a bad team, but like, could they not have success on the ground against them? Could they not get up in the game and then just get conservative? I mean, like there's so many paths to not getting to 280 in today's NFL.
He had 189 last week in a similar spread game.
That's what I'm saying. It's just so anyway, it's 280 is a lot is all I'm going to say. I can't say for certain I'm going to be on the under, but I'm probably have a pretty heavy lean towards the under on that. It's just a ton of points when it all comes down to it.